I'm Alandis Russ, and this is Tola. Over the past 6 years, my partner and I have created an established, profitable recruiting and consulting firm. We help companies of all sizes here in the US and Canada. Here's some free insight to help you get through today's crappy job market. What if the reason your recruiting team feels overwhelmed is not the fact that they need to work harder, hire faster, or post more jobs on top boards? What if the real problem is the fact that the model itself is broken? Too many organizations, I repeat, too many organizations are still trying to win the talent war with a process that's designed for a different era. They wait for an opening, they rush into sourcing, they pressure recruiters for speed, and then act surprised when the shortlist is weak. The hiring manager gets frustrated, and the new hire doesn't stick around because the employee experience is just weak. Here's the hard truth. If your recruiting strategy only begins when a requisition opens, you're already late. And in a market where talent moves fast, late is expensive. Again, welcome to TOLA, aka the Operations Leadership Agency. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about why traditional recruiting is underperforming, why AI is exposing those weaknesses even faster, and what leaders must do if they want talent acquisition to become an actual business advantage instead of a permanent operational headache. So here's the real problem. Let's start with the mistake that's showing up across internal talent teams and recruiting firms alike. Agencies and companies are fighting the same problem. Most people think the problem is execution. They think the answer is better recruiters, better dashboards, better sourcing, better discipline, better intake meetings, better responsiveness, or maybe the newest, shiniest tech tools. And while those things matter, they do not solve a structurally flawed model. The old model is reactive by design. A role opens, a recruiter scrambles, a hiring manager wants candidates yesterday. Everyone rushes into transactional mode. That process creates urgency, but not necessarily quality. It creates activity, but not intelligence. It creates reporting, but not strategy. And once you see it that way, a lot of familiar pain, it suddenly starts to make sense. Recruiters are overworked because they are constantly restarting from zero. Hiring managers are unhappy because they experience recruiting as a delay rather than a competitive capability. They disengage because the interaction feels transactional. They feel like a number. And leaders lose trust because the function rarely seems ahead of the business, never ahead of the curve. This is not a recruiter problem. This is an understanding problem. This is an operating model problem. So, if that sounds severe to you, good, because it is. And companies that get stuck there are going to get blown out. Because once you stop misdiagnosing the problem, we can finally talk about what kind of change actually moves and creates performance. Now, again, my name is Alandis Russ. I represent TOLA, aka the Operations Leadership Agency. This episode is brought to you by TOLA. We are here to help organizations turn recruiting from a reactive process into a strategic operating capability. If your team is buried in urgency, disconnected from market intelligence, or struggling to build repeatable hiring momentum, TOLA can help your leaders create a model that is built for where talent is going to be a top priority and executed at an operational level of nothing less than excellence. So let's get into why the old model keeps producing the same bad outcomes. Think about what happens inside of a reactive talent system. The team spends most of its energy responding and not preparing. That means sourcing starts after the demand shows up. Candidate relationships are only built when there's an immediate need. Market intelligence is shallow, inconsistent, or missing altogether. Metrics tend to focus on lagging indicators like time to fill without tasking whether or not the organization is building any kind of leverage. Recruiters become process coordinators instead of strategic advisors. Hiring managers treat the function like an emergency service. Leaders ask for faster hiring without addressing why the search starts from zero every time. Agencies fall into a similar trap when they build businesses around transactional fills rather than long-term market positioning and relationship ownership. We live in a digital age where you must collect attention. Attention is the new oil. And this is exactly why AI is becoming such a revealing force in recruiting. A lot of people assume that AI will save broken processes. In reality, AI is doing something way more comfortable. It is showing which teams have a real strategy and which ones are just automating noise. If your process is fundamentally reactive, automation may make parts of it faster, but it will not make it strategically smarter. That is why the conversation has to shift from efficiency alone to architecture. What are we building here? Leaders need to ask a more serious question. Are we running a hiring workflow or are we building a talent capability? So, the better model starts by recognizing that recruiters should not sit at the edge of the business as an administrative response function. It should sit much closer to operations with growth planning, workforce capability, and strategic strategy. In other words, talent should be treated as an operated discipline. Instead of waiting for open roles, you should build ongoing visibility into talent markets. Instead of treating candidate engagement like a campaign that begins and ends with a requisition, you should build relationships over time. Instead of measuring success only by how quickly you fill roles, you should measure whether or not you are developing pipeline depth, improving win rates, increasing business confidence in the function. And this is where the recruiting conversation gets much more mature because mature recruiting is not just about filling jobs. It's about helping the business understand what talent is available, where future shortages are forming, what roles will be hardest to fill, and what kind of pipeline needs to exist before the demand spikes. And that is why Tola keeps returning to this one phrase: always be scouting, always be interviewing, always be looking. Not just because it sounds good, but because it reflects a different philosophy. The best teams do not wait for the search to start. They operate as if talent discovery is a constant, ongoing responsibility because it is. So if the old model is reactive and the new model is proactive, what does that actually look like in practice? We'll get back to that. Now, if today's conversation is hitting a nerve, our book goes much deeper. The book, Discover, Engage, Win by Zach Harper, lays out the full framework for moving from linear, reactive recruiting to a model built around intelligence, relationships, and executive discipline. We must move to discipline and proactiveness. If you want the complete system rather than just the highlights, purchase the book Discover, Engage, Win by Zach Harper and use it as your playbook on what comes next. The link is in the description. Now let's get down to diagnostic questions for leaders. Questions for you. And we'll make this practical. If you lead HR, talent acquisition, or recruiting business, here are some questions that matter. How often does your team begin a search without meaningful prior engagement with the talent market? How much of your recruiter time is consumed by scheduling, coordination, updates, and status chasing? How confident are your hiring managers that recruiting understands the market before a search opens? Do you have real insight into talent availability, competitor activity, or likely hiring bottlenecks before the rec opens? And when we talk about recruiting performance, are you mainly talking about speed or are you talking about quality, readiness, and business impact? I mean, the kind of business impact that affects turnover over years. These questions matter because they reveal whether or not your team is working from a proactive system or a reactive queue. If every search feels urgent, every role feels custom, every manager feels frustrated, and every recruiter feels stretched, you're probably dealing with isolated execution issues. You are dealing with the design issue. For agency owners, the same principle applies. Are you building proprietary market insight and talent relationships? Or are you relying on speed, hustle, and last minute search efforts to fill those roles? The agencies that grow in the next cycle are not just filling roles faster, they're becoming trusted intelligence partners. So, what do we do first? The first move is not buying software. This is not about the latest, flashiest AI tool. The first move is to redefine the role of the function. Decide that recruiting is going to operate with greater visibility, better segmentation, stronger candidate relationship, better discipline, and tighter alignment to business planning. Then the next step is audit capacity. Find out how much recruiter time is being lost to things that should be centralized, standardized, automated, reassigned, or just thrown out the window. Next move, map the roles that truly matter to the business. Which positions drive growth, execution, customer delivery, or strategic change? These are the roles that deserve proactive pipeline planning. Then begin building simple market intelligence habits. Where does the talent sit? Which competitors are hiring? What skills are moving? What compensation patterns are shifting? What roles consistently produce delays? The point is not perfection, okay? The point is to stop operating blind and finally change the language of the conversation. Stop promising that recruiting will simply move faster. Start explaining that the goal is to build a smarter, more resilient, more predictive talent system. And if you want help diagnosing where your current recruiting model is creating a drag, Tola can help. You can book a consultation with us, and we will help you assess whether your team is reacting. We can find out where the capacity is being lost, and we can look at the smartest next moves for your business. Here's the bottom line. Recruiting is not broken because people do not care. It is broken because too many organizations are still running a model that can no longer keep up with the way talent actually moves in 2026 to 2030. If you keep trying to solve with just more urgency, more dashboards, more activity inside the same old system, you will keep getting the same old results. But if you redesign the model, if you treat talent as an operating capacity, build intelligence before demand appears, and commit to relationship-based pipeline development, you can create something far more valuable than faster hiring. You create leverage, friend. If you want the full framework, purchase the book, Discover, Engage, Win by Zach Harper. If you want help applying it to your team, your function, your recruiting business, I have our website and our contact information down in the description. And I'll see you in the next video.